All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Triaxle podcast. I am here today in the studio with Jonathan Fitch of LongLife Spring. Jonathan is the Director of Operations.
That's right.
Director of Operations for LongLife Spring. Jonathan, welcome.
Oh, thanks so much for having me here.
You're welcome. So we're here today. I was talking with Jonathan a little bit before the show. LongLife Spring has almost a 100-year history in Northeast Pennsylvania. You guys are now the third owner of the business.
Yeah, fourth technically because the family switched, but yeah.
Okay, so almost 100 years in business, couple different owners. They provide all sorts of heavy-duty truck repair and service a lot of local clients here. They have a couple locations. So, Jonathan, great to have you. I'd love to hear a little bit, give me a little bit of history on the business and how you guys got into the point that you're at today with a couple locations.
Okay, sounds great. So all three shops originally started in the late 20s, early 30s when the first trucks were coming off the assembly line. It was a very different business back then. There wasn't really an aftermarket world for this stuff. It was done with a forge. The old shop on Wyoming Avenue had pits in it with pieces of rebar in the concrete, and they would bend axles. There wasn't a lot of parts available back then. They used to fix things. And then slowly over the years, a lot of different aftermarket companies in Dallas and one in PA that was manufacturing springs right up until last year started to come out with the aftermarket world. And as that made more money sense, the springs were mass produced on the same assembly lines these vehicles were coming off back then. It did make a lot of sense to buy those components. They were upgrades. They were the aftermarket world. So they were heavier for these trucks that people were, overloading and everything. And those guys back then, it was torches and hammers and anvils. And we still have a lot of that old stuff now, even though the technology in the trucks hasn't changed much. In 100 years, a rear max suspension from 50 years ago looks exactly the same as the ones now. The technologies to do the work did. So originally, we bought it from Mike Duhanick, and he had done it for so long. He used to sit there for the next 10 years. He came into our building, and he would sit in our little waiting room, and our manager at the time, he would just talk to him. He'd been coming there for so long that he still came there long after he sold it and was retired. No, and it is slightly addicting. It is fun to take these vehicles and make them able to have a better capacity, make them perform better, put in, a couple of optimized parts where there's contaminants, like put poly in where it should be and not where it's rough and hard and shouldn't be. So a lot of those geometries were taught from that generation all the way through, and geometry is still the only math we really use. It's all about the angles and the measurements for the truck to go straight down the road, and that's what we focus on with our parts now. We very rarely still fire up the forges, but we all still have a forge, so we're still able. One of the Army depots, they have a custom trailer spring. It's for the military. There's no aftermarket world. For those, we fire up the forge, re-roll an eye, still the old school stuff. And it's really cool to see and be a part of because that generation is, being passed by with the amount of technologies we have now to make things so much better and faster and cheaper. But that part is still there for now. We're still a couple generations that'll still remember the cool stuff, and hopefully we could still keep it going for a little while longer.
That is pretty interesting. I wasn't even thinking before you started saying that. Like, we're talking 100 years ago. You weren't just ordering parts and having them delivered. No. You guys were like, the workers back then, they were making these things for those trucks. As they broke, they would have to copy or replicate what was on them. That's cool. It
is. It was, and the guys that we still have, we do have a 30-year guy at our Williamsport shop. He is still very good with the forge and the torch. It's really cool to have that experience and to know what it goes into to make the springs, because it does help when you're explaining problems to vendors and customers if you still know what it takes to bend and make the products that we're mostly installing every day, 365 days a year at three shops.
Sure. So the business was founded based on springs and suspension.
Yes.
And that's still your primary focus today?
It is. What we found about suspension work is it's a very niche thing. If you have if you have a business and you're working on your own vehicles, there's certain things that you know what you need every day. For a lot of guys, it's I need my oil changes, my rotations. For other guys, it's brakes. I have to have these brakes checked. I need lots of DOT inspections done. Suspension, it's heavy. You have to bring the full truck into the garage. You have to be on a level concrete ground. It's not really something you want to do in gravel, which you can with a lot of these other things. So there's fewer and fewer shops that just do what we do, and a lot of the garages don't want to get into it. It takes up space. If you're already doing diesel engines and you're waiting on, a Cummins tech or a Cat tech to fly in to finish something up, you also can't destroy another bay with a suspension job where you're tearing everything off of the frame rail. So we found that it's a great place to stay in. Not a lot of people want to do it, and we take a lot of pride in what we do with it. So we do enjoy it. It is not for everybody, but yeah, suspension is still our core business.
That's your niche.
Yes.
That's your niche. Yeah, I mean, you guys are the only ones that I know of around here that specialize in it, and that's probably accurate. That you would be the only ones. That's pretty neat.
There's very few.
And you have 3 shops. So you have Scranton, PA. What are your other ones?
We have Williamsport, Pennsylvania, right out of the downtown area. It's one of our smaller shops, but it is a great manager, a great location. We work with a lot of the oil field guys out that way. That's the dynamic of what's going on out there. Another 97-year-old company out there, R&G Spring. And then in Buffalo, same thing. This is third owner. It was actually at one point out on Walden Avenue in Buffalo. And when they first moved back to where we are now by Niagara Transformer on a dead-end road, they moved the shop by hand. So the guys got their trucks, they got pallet jacks, and they moved the entire shop back to our current location that we're at now, which was the old Upstate Steel building. So it was a big steel warehouse that we took over for what we do.
Wow.
Yeah, another old shop.
Wow. I think, I mean, it's interesting. Me, I'm a very terrible mechanic. I'm good at fabricating, from scratch and doing different stuff, but mechanically I'm awful. But you see all these nice, heavy duty trucks, dump trucks, cranes, everything going down the road. And, I think a lot of people from the industry and even like the general public, you see these trucks going down the road and they look cool, they look pretty, whatever, but you don't think about everything that goes into them. And then I think probably the first thing you would think about, well, what does it have in it for an engine, But one of the last things you're thinking about are the springs, are the suspension, and that's a crucial element to keeping these trucks on the road in the construction industry and in the trucking industry in general. I mean, that is a big deal. Without that, you're not going anywhere.
No, I mean, the engine and the drivetrain, that's what's going to pull all that weight. But if that suspension and steering, if you're not set up right, you're not going to haul the weight right, you're going to break things. It'll cause accidents. It'll cause, all different types of safety issues throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, the suspension and the steering parts are what keep your tires from wearing. And, as everybody knows right now, that's one of the most expensive yearly costs. I mean, that's a wear item. What are they up to? $10,000 to change out all the dump truck tires in one shot? I mean,
it could be.
Yeah. I mean, it can get to a ridiculous expense. And by doing some smaller steering, suspension, maintenance work, and repairs throughout the year, you might get an extra, 80,000 miles out of those tires, depending on the environment and the truck. But it does also help you to keep your vehicle uptime better, that suspension maintenance work.
Sure.
But yeah, it is a wild part that people do overlook a lot because it's not a very technical part. It's, that's broke. You just pull it out and you put it in. I mean, that's our biggest determining factor. Is it broken? Does it have play? Is it worn out? Those 3 things are all we're looking for. And most people, like you said, do look, they think, wow, the engine, that's got to be powerful. But that suspension on some of them's holding, 40, 50,000 pounds. It's a lot of weight.
That is a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So you guys are fixing and repairing, stock factory stuff, but do you also do modifications, upgrades to increase weight capacities?
Yeah, we live in the aftermarket world. I mean, these vehicles off the factory, they're made for a universal fit, one size fit all. If you buy a Peterbilt, you could throw a dump body on it, you could throw a box on it, you could throw it into a flatbed. They're very one size fits all. But then once the customer gets it, just like the aftermarket world's always been, and they determine how they're going to use that vehicle they purchased, that's where it comes in really well for us. From down to our snowplow guys who just need a little bit extra capacity during plow season but want the same ride quality, to our landscapers that want to haul a little bit more mulch in the back, so they added a box on, so we do upgrades to the suspension. So we could do like OE type replacement, or we can do upgrades. And most of our vendors, they have HD springs, which you can't call Peterbilt and say, hey, I do want that dump truck, but I want the heavy duty version. There's not a heavy duty version. That's all done through the aftermarket world. And a lot of our work is repair, but I would say equally it's upgrading people's current vehicles to something that's more usable for what they want to do with it.
Right. It's not a one size fits all world.
It really isn't.
Somebody might want a smaller, like an F550 size truck for a smaller footprint, but max out that weight capacity. And some people are doing it, whatever they're doing might need to stay legal on the roads, and then other guys are doing stuff for off-road work, out in the gas fields and stuff, where they just want to, they just need to bomb a ton of weight in that. So
Exactly.
So what else do you guys do? So springs are your bread and butter. That's your niche.
Yeah.
What other services do you offer?
So also any other major suspension overhauls. I mean, we'll take your whole suspension off the frame rail, rebush it, repair the springs, new bushings in the beams, all-wheel alignments. But then we're also big into the front end as well. Kingpins, your steering parts, your drag links, your shocks. We do a lot with airbags. That seems to be a huge problem. The air suspensions, they ride really good, but they go into environments that puncture a rubber bag very often. So airbags too, that's a huge thing. But alignments and inspections are definitely what we like the most. It's when you have the most opportunity to find the most wrong with a vehicle, which is what we're trying to do, is solve the most amount of problems each time a vehicle comes in. So we do find that to be our sweet spot. We do get a lot of alignments and inspections that turn into other work.
So what was the starting date of the business originally?
1932.
1932. That's impressive. So coming up on 100 years. So
Yes.
How did you yourself get into the business and then ultimately becoming part owner of the business?
I started at the Scranton location in October of 2009 as a tech. And we are a performance-based company, so there are two grades of techs. There's an hourly tech, and then there's a hybrid tech, which does some hourly work, but also does some performance pay work. So through the current people there, the general manager that was there at the time was a 25-year retired Ford Master tech. I learned a real lot about the technical side from him. And then we had a mechanic, his name was Louise. I'll probably remember him until the end of my career. He taught me more about the geometry of what we have to do to learn how to actually be fast enough at it. And at the time, I was probably 145 pounds. Most springs that we're putting in are 300, 200 pounds in a wheel well. So he taught me a lot about the geometry with that. And then because I enjoyed the work, I found ways to do it faster. And as I got faster, we changed a lot of the ways that we started to do things, the way that we would build them out, the ways that we can complete the jobs. And then I worked my way into the highest level, which is the full flat rate. Nothing was hourly. I got paid strictly on performance. And at that point, we were going through some management changes. So I got moved into a shop foreman position in 2017. And then in 2018, took over the full Scranton shop. And by November of 2018, took over running all three shops, and then moved into an ownership minority stake, just based on what I brought to the table every day, rather than taking a chance that I wanted to go out on my own or do anything different. Craig presented me with such an opportunity that I couldn't pass it up for a company that I was already invested in and loved being at. So it was a no-brainer for me.
Sure. That's awesome. Hard work pays off, persistence, patience. You're now the owner, one of the co-owners of the company, but you started off working on trucks.
Yes.
And that's the best way to learn about the business and understand it. I think there's a lot of guys out there that, they might be owners of the business because they bought into it or they started it, but without actually working their way up and seeing the struggles and what the techs go through and how the customers react. You got all the experience that you needed right there and stuck with it and worked your way up. So that's awesome.
It does. It helps a lot getting a chance to work at the different positions so that you can really understand when they're having. No, it's never when anybody's having a good day. When everybody's having a good day, everything fires right. The day's smooth. You walk out at 5 o'clock and it feels like you've been there for 30 minutes. You'll have a similar day where it feels like a 20-hour day in the first 2 hours. So understanding what the techs go through, understanding what it's like to come as a tech to the counter and understand the customer's concerns, and then try to find that happy compromise between the customer's wants and needs, what my mechanics or techs are able to do, and trying to come up with that. That's the fun part every day. But without having, I think, all of those different areas at least being touched them at some point, it would make it much more difficult to be efficient at what I do.
Sure. It'd be hard to sympathize or understand the customer's point of view. Hey, why is this taking so long? Why is this so expensive? What, why? And then on the other hand, your employees, your mechanics, you were one, so you understand. And you understand. We were talking about this before the show started. Sometimes you'll spend 8 hours on 3 bolts, and that's just how the day went. And that's not one of those happy, everybody leaves at 5 o'clock and everybody's smiling days.
Right. And if you never struggled with the 3 bolts, you're not going to understand how you could pay somebody for an 8-hour day who just struggled with 3 bolts if you've never gone down that road.
Absolutely. For sure. So what are some of the biggest challenges in running a spring shop, running a heavy-duty truck shop from the time that you got into the business until, what you're seeing now? I mean, technology all around us is ever-changing. Expenses of raw materials, lead times, everything, that stuff is always fluctuating. What are some of the biggest challenges and hurdles that you guys have to overcome to run a successful truck repair business?
Yeah, that's a weird recipe that, like you said, it changes. It's cyclical. Different times of the year, the recipe's slightly different because a lot of the customers that we service are seasonal. Blacktop guys are busy during the summer, whereas trash guys, every Tuesday's trash day. They're much more similar. So one of the hard parts is knowing within that cycle what you need to have. Do you need to have extra parts now, or is this the time of year where you thin it out a little bit because you don't need to hold a big inventory because you move into a slow season? And managing labor. The blue collar world is taking it seems like another hit again because of COVID, and not a lot of people are going back into the VOTEC, or they're coming out and going into some different field from that, whether it's manager. A lot of these companies are hiring, a lot of the big bulk fleet management companies. They're constantly looking for an influx of new blood. So our biggest problem is hiring techs and managers that want to continue this on, because it is a very physical type of work that we do. So that's I think our 2 biggest struggles. The biggest struggle that I see a lot of people have gone through for the last few years is parts. Parts changed. COVID changed how we get our parts now, and it also changed even what country we get them from. I don't know if it's going to get any better anytime soon, but that changed the most. I mean, even the dealership now, I get more calls now from the dealer than I ever did before looking for parts, because even their manufacturers aren't able to fulfill the demand right now. So I think that's the hardest things. It's always going to be your people and your parts. If you can get the right quality of parts at the right timing for when customers need them, it's not as a simple formulaic, like Walmart. You go in every day, you check out 32 people, you go home, that's your metric for the day. For ours, it changes based on the customer's needs, really. This time of year, people aren't in a hurry. You have their truck for 3 days. You can try a little harder to find a better part faster. Summertime.
Yeah, try that with the blacktop guy in the middle of summer holding his truck for a couple of days.
They pull into the parking lot screaming, "Can you get this done in 10 minutes? What's broke, my friend? What's
the whole
broke?"
front end's ripped off. Well, no, that's not going to be 10 minutes.
Yeah, and we try to, the only way to keep customers consistently happy is you have to give them what they want. And if what they want is turnaround, then that particular customer, nothing else matters. He wants his work processed in, out, quickly, effectively, wants it back. Other people that have different dynamics. So we have to be diverse because we do focus on different groups of customers. You have to treat townships that are on budgets much differently than you have to treat somebody who doesn't care, they need it now. It's going to work on a site that's going to finish out their budget for the entire year. Those are two different customers. They have the same need, they have the same thing broken, but they have a different reason for needing it back and when they need it back. And that's difficult. That's something you have to train your people for. You can't put it into a process, how to understand when this guy's screaming. Is it only because he's in a situation that he needs us to get involved with and help him get out of it quickly, and then his next job will be normal? And it is. That's the part where we struggle with every day because our customers need their vehicles.
Sure. You guys have to be skilled at what you do, but also customer service is a big part of this because you got a lot of different businesses, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different patience levels and budgets coming into this. And when somebody comes in with something broken, it's a different story for everybody,
It is. And we really try to stay business to business. I mean, if you called me and said, hey, a friend of mine needs a repair done to his pickup truck, of course I would still do it. But I would never prioritize that over a business to business. It's not a same understanding. If your personal pickup truck is at, the tire spot for an extra 2 days, well, your wife or your buddy or your friend gives you a ride to work for those 2 days. If your dump truck is down for an extra 2 days, you might have lost $7,000. Yeah. It's not their ride to work. The truck is actually what generates their income. So it's a different mindset for those groups.
So you're catering towards the businesses, the service industry.
Yeah, primarily for the work that we do sets it up as that type of business plan. Some of these big suspension jobs and kingpin jobs, they're 8, 10, 12, 20-hour jobs. So when somebody brings those to us, they understand my vehicle is going to be down for 2 days. 2 days at any shop, I already understand it's going to be a roughly this amount of money, which is much higher than the average consumer's used to paying. And business to business, they understand that. They know it's a dump truck. They know we're doing a lot of work to it. They understand it's going to take 2 days and it's going to cost this amount. The average person, when they come in, well, it's just this. Can't you just fix that? It's like, I understand that's what you think. I have 8 bays. I have a heated floor. I have 4 techs. Like, it's not just that. And business people, they understand that so much better because they deal with that exact same thing every day. So it's a better fit for us, but we don't turn it down. If you're a business-to-business guy and you're Mike with a pickup truck, this is my guy. You're still going to get serviced the same way, but this is where my priority lies, is these people need these as their livelihood. This is your side toy for the weekend at a mud fest, It's a different world for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned COVID. A lot of people had to navigate uncharted waters through COVID. How did it affect you? From my perspective, you guys are a truck repair shop. The world shut down. And so, other than, public service type stuff for a while and like essential stuff and then slowly ease back in, I'm sure you guys saw a drastic reduction in business. How did you guys navigate those waters?
We lost in Scranton based on who our customers were and how the rules changed for them. Our business dropped 70%.
Wow.
In Scranton, Williamsport and Buffalo, both about 50%, but Scranton took the hardest hit. Pennsylvania and New York obviously had different laws than a lot of the other states, get put into effect really quickly. And one of the problems about the way that we do business and the way that our customers do business is the winter is the slow time. So come winter, I don't see a lot of my customers until spring again. It's already a time where they've laid off employees, money gets tight. In the dynamic of what they do, a lot of these guys finance their truck repairs with the work that they do throughout the year. That's what finances everything that they do. Well, going into COVID, everything stopped. It was the slow time of the year. Nobody had extra money, and they weren't even sure if they could work. On top of that, a lot of our customers laid off or already had laid off and lost half of that workforce that never came back. So we had customers that put their trucks down for the winter and usually bring them in the springtime to get them ready for all the big work that they do all summer. They didn't have drivers to bring them down. The repairs that they probably should have done the year before but didn't, now we can't get the parts for. So by the way that they've always done business, which is the way we always have, it actually triggered to make it so much harder. And a lot of people said, Essential, you guys work on dump trucks, utility companies. We do, some of the local utility companies. Well, they didn't stop working. No, they didn't, but they didn't put their trucks down. Their mechanic guys were either off, they didn't have any budgets, they were only supposed to use them for fixing that utility repair that day, not to drop them off anywhere. So there were days where we had 4 guys staring at each other. There's only so many times you could do inventory, sweep the floor, and our problem was it takes a very long time to train a suspension tech up to fully understand how it works. So during all of that, just like a lot of my customers did, we paid our employees through the entire COVID. When, our numbers were in the tank, we didn't lay off a single person. We kept them at their same rates so that they wouldn't leave. And that was a really hard part, was paying people with no money coming in, just because the dynamic of the way that we always did business, where we know winter's our slow time, we know it's our customer's slow time. Well, when that happened, it just created the perfect storm for us.
I was just going to say the perfect storm. I mean, I sat out here, so we're here at my building or former building in Dalton. I still leave some space here. But when the news came in and that was going on, we were under construction here. We were putting this building up. I had taken on a huge, financial burden to erect this building, and it wasn't even done yet. And I remember when they said, "All right, yeah, everything's shut down." I mean, I was sitting on the sidewalk with my hands on my head, going, "I'm going to lose it all. This is over. We're all going to lose everything." And of course that didn't happen, but it was tough. It was difficult trying to navigate that. We never had to do that before.
No, and that was the biggest problem. With all of the other things that we face year to year, we know when there's certain, remember in '08, after that whole stock market thing, we know how that affected our business. We've had all of our trends up until now, but being that this was something brand new, we didn't even know how to predict how to come out of it. And then on top of it, similar situation to you, right before COVID, we had 2 great years. And we were on Wyoming Avenue, and we were parking our trucks all the way in front of Mesco Glass's building. They couldn't even see their building because we had no parking space. We decided to, at that time, get a bigger facility, more parking for our customers, drive-through bays so that we could bring trucks and trailers in fully and work on them the correct way. So we did an upgrade. We moved into our new building in Oliphant in April of 2020 with no work. The only thing that was great about moving at that time was there was no traffic, and it was easy to get a step deck truck to move us because nobody was bothering us right then. It was that quiet.
And you had the time and the labor and the hands to do the move, which is nice, not having to do that during the hectic, fast pace of the daily routine, but certainly not the way you would have chosen to have done it.
No. The timing would have been great if we had another, 2019 after that. It really would have been. It was the perfect time for us to make a big move up to a larger facility. We actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we did the same thing in Buffalo. We had been leasing the building for the longest time, and the people that were in there, another 100-year-old company, Upstate Steel, they bought an old Bethlehem Steel building in 35 minutes away. So we had the opportunity. Here's where we had an opportunity. If we didn't buy the building then, and somebody bought it out from underneath us during COVID when everybody was looking for warehousing, we could end up losing the Buffalo shop completely. So sales were down, and we also had to now buy that building at the worst time in our timeline for the company as it ever could be. So we sat down, I believe it was a week straight. We just sat in a room with each other, Greg and myself, and said, what can we do? How can we move forward? And we realized early on, I know it took a lot of people longer, the new normal, it was never going back. A lot of people kept calling up and say, hey, do you guys have any feel for when it's going to go back to how it was? And we realized early on it's not going to. When you stop manufacturing at a lot of our parts companies for that long of a period of time, by the time they start it back up, they're already running 3 months behind. They're now 6, 9, 12 months behind, depending for how long they were shut down. So we knew everything was going to go to a new normal, and we tried to start setting up for that new normal open-mindedly. And I think we ended up doing an okay job of it. I think we could have made a couple of changes better, but you don't know. There was no guidebook for this one.
That was your first run at it. And when You know, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, then it was 2 more weeks, then here we are 4 years later and still coming out of this crap, you know?
It was.
So yeah, I mean, that was a tough one to navigate. And yeah, when you're manufacturing springs and parts and bushings and everything that you're using on a daily basis, and you're used to that UPS or that LTL truck coming, you know, consistently every day, and then it stops and it goes from 2 days to unknown. Like, yeah, you used to order stuff. Yeah, we don't know. Well, how can you do that? We don't know. My wife's car, even recently, the taillight went out on a Chevy Traverse. It's not available. It's not available. Finally found one on eBay. But like that used to just drive down to the Chevy dealer and get that.
Yeah.
It's insane. Some of the things that we just took for granted, it was just a way of life. Okay, just order those parts. Now it's like, shit, call California to see if they can ship that down and beat the other guy who might buy it, and that's how you have to do business now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing about that is a lot of our customers too, they're more of an old school blue collar type. Not a lot of accountants own a lot of dump trucks, and if they do, they have somebody else who brings it down. So having these blue collar guys that aren't big into technology too is even harder for us to communicate what we were going through at that time. Most of my customers and most of the guys that own these companies or run them, even the municipalities and the townships, not a lot of them are email people. Not a lot of them are text message people. You know, when I say, hey, I'm going to email you this quote over, they're like, no, fax it. And it's like, okay, so it was very even hard for us at this time to communicate to some of our customers and talk to them. So we ended up deciding in the middle of all this just to go all in. And we went on an 8-week tour up at our Buffalo location where we just went out and talked to as many customers that we could in 8 weeks and figure out what everybody else's plan was to try and make our plan parallel to theirs. And it was 8 weeks of different answers. I mean, we saw 100 different customers in 8 weeks, and everybody was still in that same, we're not sure, we're unsure. And what that led us to was to make a decision to completely change the way that we run the business, the way that we buy our parts, and the customers that we're going to serve, so that we don't run into another situation that if something like this does happen, of course you want to be bulletproof for anything. So now that we've seen this happen, we tried to set ourselves up in a way that if we do ever run into another type of, global or national pandemic or crises, that as long as the trucks are still running, we'll be shored up enough to be able to service our customers in the right way.
And how, like on a high level, without getting into all the details, how have you set yourself up for that? What are the key things that you looked at and realized that were factors that you could control, whether it was just looking at different outlets for parts or beefing up on certain inventory that will get used? How did you guys adapt to that?
Well, a lot of the things that we did are very similar to that. We set up our payment structure for our techs in an even better incentivized performance way that also gave them some room for slow times. So we're never going to have to worry about losing a tech unless they're ready to retire, move on to something better for themselves. Other than that, my techs my lowest tech last year made $74K. My highest tech made $114K. These are suspension techs, no, diesel certifications, not CAT Cummins certified. I got suspension guys who used to be like the tire guys, like they always got abused, like, oh, you're just a suspension guy. Well, he had a really good year last year. So we figured out a way to let our techs decide their own destiny as far as their paycheck and their performance base, with still keeping our customers' satisfaction level up by, this type of tech works on this type of vehicle, this type of tech, he works on this type of vehicle. And we did. We went back to our vendors. Our vendors did a really good job of shoring up their issues as best that they could. They made a lot, our hardcore vendors, they made a lot of acquisitions during this so that they could increase their supply chain throughout different countries that don't do things the same way, so that if this country's shut down for shipping and this country's, they're raising their prices up because of petroleum, well, this guy, he's fine over there. So this week we order from him and we always have parts. That was one thing. And then the other thing that we decided was more revenue streams. obviously, in times like these, the more involved you can get with customers' issues. And one of the things that we realized is we had bad habits that set us up to come close to being out of business during COVID, because our customers also have some bad habits in the way that they maintain and spend their vehicles. So for the customers with the large fleets who wanted to make a big impact, we started trying to figure out, LongLife is a service and parts company. What would be a company that could help them be more efficient and make better decisions? And that's what led us into Legion Asset, which is it's a newer company. We've been working on it for about 2 years, but it's finally ready. It's in its full form. It's been practiced. It's been used, and that is something to help them have better practices, to be more predictive, so that they're not running into a situation where, and you know how it is. You're on your last week on a site to finish up this job, and 3 trucks go down. And that is going to put you behind, and that is going to screw you up. So we want to help them with that aspect as well. When it does break, we want to fix it. When you do need a part for your guys, we want to sell you that part. But when you want to know what's going on, we also want to help you have the best data from within your own company to make the best decisions for you. So that's where we really transition. We're LongLife, making it very secure, very stable, always having the staff to get the work done, making sure our vendors can supply us with all the parts that we need as soon as we need them, and then working on the customers' difficulties through that and trying to see which customers we can help with those problems.
Neat. Very good. So the fact that you guys are here today is a testament of your creativity, your willingness to just think outside the box. And not give up, because a lot of people went out of business during COVID, and not to the lack of trying. But it's you guys. You went on a tour. Yes, it sounds like you and Greg really, you guys worked really hard to keep this going, and that's awesome. That's entrepreneurism. That's what it's all about. And we were talking earlier here, some people looking in from the outside, oh, he owns a company. He just screws off all day and he just goes on vacation. No, you have this, you take home the stress that, the employees do not. There's a lot of rewards with being in business for yourself, but it never ends. That phone rings 7 days a week. Doesn't matter where you are. If you're on vacation or trying to sleep, you're committed. You're in.
It is. It's a lifestyle to get used to. My wife said it to me, like I said, during COVID. There was times during COVID when we were out just seeing customers and trying to figure everything out. You've never been this slow at the shop, and you're never home. It's like, yeah, when it's slow, we have to figure it out. There's nobody who's going to figure this out for us if we don't figure it out. Same way a lot of, companies went out of business during COVID. They didn't want to invest any more time. They were either towards the end of their careers and said, now's a good time to sell, or it just became so unsurmountable to get back to where it was, and certain even customer bases disappeared. A lot of the oil field things have changed in this area, so a lot of those customers have gone out of the area, and places that were dedicated to that, it hurt. But yeah, I think what we realized is you have to stay really relevant. You have to have a lot of different ways that you can impact the customer that they would find a value in, because that's the other thing too. There has to be a value. These are not people who are silly. When they make a business decision, they think long and hard on it. These trucks are expensive. This type of work that we do, you put a lot of costs up front that you are not entirely sure you're going to get back on the end. So our customers are scrappy, risk-taking, but when they spend $1, they want $1's worth back. So as long as we stay in that mindset, I think that we'll be pretty good for our future and going forward with our customers. And we do a lot of outreach with our customers at all 3 locations. We go and see customers as much as possible. We've realized employees and customers, great employees, great customers. It gets a little more set it and forget it, but it's never an 8-hour day, or on a sunny day I get to go fishing. It's okay. I don't want to either. If I wanted that life, I could move back to a tech role. I like what I do now. It's much more exciting.
Yeah. So Greg's not here to defend himself or talk or have any input, but you have a business partner. How, you guys obviously seem to work very well together. You guys, so Greg had the business first, and then he made you an offer, and you came in.
Yes.
What's it like? You went from being a tech and basically, getting instructions for your day to then working your way up, and now you are running 3 locations. You have a partner. As a business owner, what's it like having a partner, only a few years or in a short time, going from a tech to being an owner?
I never would have been able to make that transition without Greg. Greg, he's from Scranton, grew up in North Scranton, went to prep, went to Penn State and Rochester School of Business. Greg with accounting, with business questions, real estate questions, super smart, very operational. He's one of those guys, if you give him a problem, you're not getting your answer that day. He's going back in the room. He's writing it down. He's breaking it down. When you do get the answer, it'll be the right answer. Whereas I live in the world where I have to make an answer now. My customer needs this truck. I have to make a decision. Who's going to eat the cost? Who's going to get that? It has to be done where he gets to take his time. So we're very opposite. He's more bookish, and I'm more tech side. He's more emotional. I'm not. I don't get very emotional. I've had customers and mechanics throw wrenches, throw things at me. I can't get emotional, whereas he can because he's in an office. You could throw a keyboard. Nobody sees it.
Yeah.
So we balance each other out really well. He interned at a couple of really big companies right out of college and came back. And at the time, his dad and his dad's partners owned the business, and he had an interest in it, worked the front counter. And I really wish he was here because I don't know how many people can picture Greg. He's a smaller guy. He's maybe 5'4", 145, and he's always dressed well. And you just not somebody to picture at the front counter to Spring Shop. But when he's there, he does it pretty good. He knows his business. He knows our customers. He loves going out to see customers. But we're polar opposite. If you were both sitting here and you said, what time did you wake up today? I'm going to say 4:30. He's going to say 10:30. He works the night shift up there. He's a later guy, works till midnight crunching numbers. I have to be there when the customers are there, when the shop is open. I'm day-to-day operations, and he's really interesting. He got me into Dale Carnegie, which is what helped me go from, mechanic, cursing, yelling, throwing things to get my point across to being able to, speak to my people. He got me involved with a sales and strategy guy out of Florida. Went down to a seminar, learned and understood the practice of sales. I'm never going to be good at sales. I'm just not one of those guys who's going to kiss your ass to get you to buy something from me.
You're too honest.
Yeah,
you
want to do business with me? Do business with me. If you don't, I understand you're making a mistake. But yeah, so we really do balance each other out well. And he helps me with the parts that I don't understand, the accounting part, what labor and materials have to be in order for the net profit number that he wants. He breaks it down for a way that makes it. I'm somebody who, if you said to me, take that apart right now, I could take it apart. And as long as I take it apart, I could put it back together. It's not going to work, but I could take it apart and put it back together. And he understands how my mind works that way. So he breaks the parts that a mechanic should never understand, how to be profitable, how to do marketing, how to do sales. He helps me with the gap there. And I help him with the gap of the technical side. He's the one who calls me and says, why is 3 bolts taking all day? And he wants me to be able to explain it back to him. So it's like a seesaw between us all day long, and we do feed off each other, positively always. If he's in a rut, I drag him out of the rut. If I'm in a rut, he's like, all right, come on, we got to go see customers, because that's what brings us out of our rut. Talking to our customers is always a good day for us. So whenever we're having rough days, we'll hop in the car, we'll go see 5 customers. It's always a day changer for us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great relationship.
A yin and a yang, and that's what you need, because if you guys were exactly the same, you would be contributing to the same areas, and then there would be nobody picking up where you were lacking.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how my brother and I are business partners, and he's very technically savvy. I'm sitting here hosting a podcast, but when the stuff doesn't work, I want to throw it out the window. And he's the type of guy that can sit down and be like, no, it's not a big deal, But I make it a big deal. So it sounds like you guys have the kind of the same thing going on.
It is. It always surprises people. I'll give you a funny story about him, because when he watches it, I want him to at least get a chuckle. But he's very, I always give him a hard time. I say, you dressed up all Brooks Brothers, and we're going into shops today. And it's, it's not Brooks Brothers, but it's a sweater and a button-down shirt and khakis and nicer shoes. We went up to the Buffalo shop the one time, and I had some newer people there. And I said, I need somebody to move this truck right now. Well, just because he looks, like an accountant, he because he owns this business and realized, how can I ever understand it fully if I don't understand it a little bit? He has gone to Johnson to get his inspection license, his CDL. So he's like, I got it, hops in it. Everybody turned and looked, all these big mechanics. Greg knows how to drive a dump truck. He said his CDL for 10 years. I don't even have my CDL. I could drive one, not legally. He could drive one legally. So don't confuse him too much that he's, all business. I've seen him underneath trucks before working with the guys when we were shorthanded, especially during COVID, and then we would get an influx. He'd come right down and work underneath the truck.
That's great.
Yeah.
So he's putting himself where he needs to be to understand everything, and he's never you can never be great or understand everything fully, and that's why he has you.
Right.
So
absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah, he was kind of everybody was shocked when he jumped in the truck and moved it, thinking he was probably going to drive it through the front door or something.
If I hadn't seen it before, it would have shocked me too, but I'd seen him do it once before, and I said, why did you just move that truck? Just to show you that I could. This was very early in our relationship when we were testing each other's waters to see who had more control and power.
Sure.
He would love to throw things out like that every once in a while. When I went back to go to inspection school for the heavy duty license, he said, I'm coming with you. I said, well, this isn't really your thing. He's like, well, the business aspect isn't really your thing, and I drag you into these accounting and marketing meetings. He's like, so I'll come and do this with you. And it has formed. We're great friends because of it. Even if we went our own ways with the business at some point, we would always remain great friends.
That's great. So did you know Greg before you started as a tech, or you were just started as a tech?
No, and one part of his story that he likes to tell is, for a long time he was an absentee owner. Once he learned the business, understood the dynamic, and got them firing a certain way, he set them and forget them, and he was kind of an absentee business owner. He went and pursued other interests and did other things for a few years and was not around that much. From 2009 until 2017, I might have met Greg a dozen times in those 8 years, and then from 2017 until now, I think I might spend as much time with him as I do my wife and kids. I really do.
That's running a business. I think that's awesome. That's a great story. Like just how you started, how you worked your way up, how you and Greg found this relationship where you just work together so well. I mean, that's the American dream, man. That's what it's all about.
It really is.
That's what it's all about. So what do you guys have in mind? Like what not to know your future secrets or all your plans, but what's your vision? You guys have 3 locations, successful locations. You guys made it through COVID. You did what you had to do to get through that. Are things, are your sales getting back up? Are you back to pre-pandemic or pre-COVID levels?
This year, 2023 numbers, we just had our manager meeting down at our Williamsport location last weekend. So all of our revenue numbers, all of our sales are exactly back to what they were in 2019. The only issue now is we're paying probably 30% more for parts and probably about 25% more for labor. So those same numbers now are no profit, whereas before they would have been, 20% net profit. Now you're looking at break even. Right. So the goal for us for this year is obviously to continue to work with our vendors, and they're doing a really good job of trying to renegotiate their contracts with their suppliers to get the parts pricing down, or at least steady, where they're not going to be raising every other week, where my customers are constantly confused over their invoices. So that part is critical. And the way that we get our information out, we've realized that over the last few weeks, the wintertime is our outreach time, and every year we learn a little bit more. And what we're learning this year is there's a lot of opportunities out there, and a lot of companies don't seem to know how to find us. It's not a lot of people are searching for suspension shops. I walked into a place I'd never been at in Wilkes-Barre last week because somebody told me that they were complaining about not being able to get parts. So immediately that to me is, well, there's an opportunity. So I drive straight down there with a flyer, had a heck of a time getting in the gate. And he said, we have a new manager from out of the area. He's now running 3 of our locations, doesn't know anybody here. So what I have to realize is, just because we've been here for 100 years and up until 2019 survived on word of mouth, that's not enough anymore. So, we need to this year, and we're already in these steps and these processes of doing it. We need to make sure that we're constantly sending things out to the people in this area that we could service the best, so that they're aware we're not having procurement problems. We're not having, shipping issues. We have these parts that you need. We're always here. We've always been here. We're always going to be here. So we need to get our messages out a lot more this year, which it's only been 3 years that we've been leaving the shops, religiously to go and spend time with our customers. So it's more of that this year. And it's finding better ways to reach new customers, because that's the other thing that I've seen, and you've probably seen it too. A lot of these companies that have been around forever, they want their kids to go to college and not take over this company. So when they actually retire, who takes them over? So that we're seeing some new people that aren't aware of the prior relationships. They're buying these companies. So I just want to get our word out there, what we have, what we do, and let people decide if that's the right fit and the right value for their needs. But we're very focused on that this year. As much sales as possible, go out and see our customers, let them know what we have available, try and, fit their needs. And at the same time, make sure that I'm going to be able to fill their needs, make sure that I'm going to have techs that are trained up at each shop, that our processes are there. So every truck comes in, gets the right work done at the right time, and to make sure that our vendors keep those parts just coming in. So that's our 2024 goal. And again, it's an election year. So that political, social, and economic, that affects our business a lot. When people feel good, they spend more money.
Sure.
They want to do more landscaping. They want to do more, and that's what starts to generate all of our business. It comes up from the low end consumer up to us. So I'm hoping for a really good year coming off of 23. 23 was a great learning year for us, and it was a great way for us to get back to where we were. And now, we're not a business you could 10x. Like I'm a big Grant Cardone fan, but our business isn't that kind of business. It's not
possible.
Not in one area. We have a partner that owns a shop up in Long Island. Yeah, he's got 3 million people in 20 square foot. I deliver parts 100 miles around my shop. I have guys coming from Callicoon, New York.
Right.
There's no way to 10x what we do. All we could do is just make it as efficient as possible and as profitable as you can, with still being fair to your customers.
Sure. And I do think we're going to start seeing parts and materials, like on our end, building materials are coming back down. They're starting to stabilize. The demand that we saw the past 3 years it's not as crazy. Now, there's still a lot going on. It depends who you ask. Some guys are starting to get a little bit slow with the economy. Other guys are busier than they've ever been, and they're out buying 10 more trucks this year. It kind of just depends, where you got yourself set up and who you're tied in with and the work that you do and your reputation. But to your point, it seems like things are starting to get better with the decreased demand, with all the chaos. The first problem with COVID was we all thought we were going out of business.
Absolutely.
And then the second problem was we got busier than we ever thought we could have been, and lack of help, lack of labor, lack of parts. And now it all seems to be kind of like stabilizing. All the chaos is gone and things are kind of working themselves out. So hopefully things have caught up, and the factories have caught up, and the part availability should get better. And with the decreased demand, hopefully the pricing stabilizes as well.
Right. And I think you're right. I think that's what it looks like is going on now. But eventually it would have had to some point stabilize, because for 2.5 years, everything just went up, 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 up. And like you said, demand changed completely, but everybody got smarter too. We got smarter. My customers, of course, we're all blue collar people. We adapt every day. We adapt to weather conditions to still get our work done within, our time frames. So we've all adapted now to the new normal. And I think even I see a lot of my customers are spending so much smarter. Now, before they go and buy those 3 new trucks, they're saying, I need to know what kind of parts go into this truck? What kind of parts am I going to need? Are they available? And they're not just buying, the prettiest Kenworth out there on the market. They're saying, for what I do and for how often I'm going to need these parts, I have to go with this type of vehicle. So I think one thing COVID did do is make us, all the people who survived it are much smarter, much tougher, much more resilient, and understand that this can happen again. You never realize how bad it can get until you're in the bad, and now you're like, okay, so if this is the worst, we can't let this happen again. So that's what you now set your bars toward. Here's our high end, and this is the bottom dropped out. We can't go back to this again.
Right. That's a great attitude. That's awesome. And a testament to great business owners, great entrepreneurs, and really just it comes down to doing whatever it takes. And you do a lot of doing whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
So future plans, you guys seem like you're pretty content, pretty stable with your 3 locations. You like your system that you have going on. You mentioned earlier that at one point there was a bunch of other locations before you came into the business.
Yes.
And then you kind of, worked away from those and got back down to the core.
Yes.
Any future, expansion, or are you just going to work the plan and keep rolling?
I like the amount of shops that we have now. We're in great areas. I mean, I travel to the shops a lot. I think I put about 42,000 miles on my company truck a year, just traveling between the 3 locations. I love our customers in each of the areas, and I'm very happy with the ease of which I can travel between the 3. So adding any more bricks and mortar store, I don't know if I would be able to handle them myself. And we've really started to focus on getting into some digital help with asset and fleet management and workforce platforms for some of our companies that Walmart, JB Hunt, these big over-the-road tractor companies, they have an IT department. They have all of these big departments that are fueled by, the retail business. But if you take a guy that has a construction company and he's been doing very well and he's grown it because he's a worker, he understands the game, and he's growing this business. When you hit that 20 truck mark, you can service your 20 trucks. They're all probably the same make and model. They're all the same part numbers, very easy to maintain. When you hit that over 20 mark and you're hitting those 50, 100, like a lot of the growth that we did see, guys that did well through COVID and figured it out and were still managed to grow, they're at a point now where they can't necessarily understand every aspect that's going on their fleet, keep track of it in a way that's efficient. They're still using some whiteboards and paper files and filing cabinets. And we realize that's making it very hard for growth-minded companies to be able to track their costs and know when they're in an area that they're in a danger zone. So, through some software apps and some consulting, we have some systems in place that can help them track their data without going out and hiring, a $60,000 a year IT person and a $60,000 fleet manager, or, used to be $60,000, probably $120,000 fleet manager now. Instead of spending $180,000 on 2 roles, we could put you at an at-unit cost, give you that same information. Everything is on a transparent platform with digital workflows for your people to follow through the techs, shop managers, and drivers through their phones. They can do their DVIRs through their phone. They can update any issues with their vehicle, and it's real-time visibility. At the same time that the driver reports a problem, the shop manager, the fleet manager, the owner of the company, all these people are made aware that this vehicle has a problem. And then we were working on the workforce management piece, which is, it's very difficult within these companies to communicate. I mean, look at some of these companies. They have a crew in Virginia, a crew here, and they all need to get certain information on the same time, and nobody's using a consistent communication platform because that's not what construction companies do. They have a great year, they buy 8 more dump trucks. They have a really good year, they might buy 6 more trailers with the dump trucks. They don't spend money on trying to control all of their costs and be able to track them. Sometimes they're not even doing anything wrong. But if you ask most business owners, how much money did you spend on repairs in that truck last year? They don't know. And then the bigger question is how much money did all of your competitors that are bidding the same jobs as you, how much did they spend last year? Because that's where it affects the business owner. If they're able to run their fleet more efficiently, have less costs there and less downtime, their bidding gets cheaper, and then you start losing work. So we realized after talking to a lot of customers that is a real struggle point for them. And that's something that Craig and I both have a very big interest in. The technology for tracking the vehicles is amazing. The communication platforms, we've already instituted them in our shops and our workers love them. We're able to give quick things out. We get a tech service bulletin. Every one of my techs could have it in 30 seconds through our app. So that is our big focus too as well for 2024. It's a 50-50 split. LongLife, structuring it up, making sure that everything is stable within as these things are, like you said, finalizing. I think we're on the end of the cycle where whatever the new norm is going to be determined in the next year, and then focusing on helping the customers on a digital platform, something that's much more fun but can make a bigger impact to their bottom lines, obviously is worth more than this. So it's going to be a 50-50 split. It's going to be the hard work one and the more fun one at the same time, and hopefully build them both up to where they need to be.
Sure. I think that's the future of being in business and staying competitive, is continuously refining and in becoming more efficient. As technology becomes more readily available, the guys, your customers that, like the fax, they want their invoice fax, that's going by the wayside. You are not going to be able to compete with these guys that have everything at the palm of their hands, and they get the docs, instantly, and they can sign reports. I think that's going to be one of the big things that we see going forward in all industries, but especially in this blue collar world where we're constantly struggling to find qualified help, dealing with the expenses, the parts, and everything. Fine tuning your operation and understanding your costs and understanding every penny, adds up to $1. Every dollar is $10,000. Becoming more efficient, I think, is going to be a major focus of a lot of businesses going forward. And people are starting to realize things that they never thought about because they're catching on because their competitors doing it, or it's being brought to their attention, or they're, listening to a podcast or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that's a big deal.
There's always been a certain amount of waste within these companies because, like, during the busy season, you know how it is. These are huge jobs. You have huge amounts of money coming in, and you have to know, when I just finish up this contract, but what do I owe? And it's nice to know, if you, like you said, you pick up your phone, you look at the dashboard of your fleet, and you could say, okay, I see on these inspections and these PMs, I'm going to be 3 engines in. So that big job I just finished, I got to earmark a third of it for these repairs down the road. The more predictive you could get and the more technology that you can add in there so you have real-time data, and then track trends. I mean, certain guys that run, a certain fleet of Kenworth dump trucks might be getting way better mileage than you. Well, why? What did they switch to that they are? And knowing, that's the nice thing about with us, is when you have multiple customers that have the same type of fleets, we can share what this guy's struggles are with this customer's best practices because they have the same type of fleet and the same type of environment. And they're going through the same struggles. So that other information sharing within our industry, especially the suspension industry, is hilariously bad. When I go, I don't like to say that I compete with any spring shop. I believe there's enough business in this area for the few amount of spring shops that they are that we can all have our own customers. So they're, my 2 competitors, one is just out of my area, so I don't drive down that way. But my other one, I probably stop once a month to see him, to see what he's seeing as well, because that information sharing is something that nobody in our industry wanted to do. They always thought that like suspension and steering work was this art, and they would have their doors down in the summer where I'm a door open. Yeah, as soon as the weather hits 45, our doors are open. We want fresh air. And that was one part that I never quite understood, because it's what we do is basic. How you do it, how you maneuver it, all of those things are the harder part. But changing a spring, we were not dealing with Mensa people to change a spring. It's very easy.
Yeah. So kind of communicating, not you're not necessarily collaborating with your competitor, but you're sharing information and understanding what's working for them, what trends they're seeing.
Right.
And a lot of guys, I mean, business minded and in the construction, type world, it can be very cutthroat. It can be very secretive what you have going on. But I'm starting to see too, a lot of guys are starting to do this. Like you're stopping and seeing that, competitor, but a lot of guys I'm seeing are actually starting to share information. They're starting to work together. Guys that used to bid against each other and still in some cases do, they can't get the 10-man crew that they need for 40% of their work, but they have 5 guys and their former competitor, or still competitor, but kind of buddy. Now I'm seeing a lot of guys in the construction, masonry, landscape business. They're maintaining their crew for their 60% of their workload that they have for the year. But then when they get these bigger jobs, they call up their buddy and say, "Hey, I got another one. Come on over," and they work together. And there's a lot of resource sharing, equipment sharing, talent sharing, to keep everybody going. And I think a lot of guys are starting to realize, hey, I don't have to look at that guy like he's a jerk and he's my competitor. Working with him is more beneficial than ignoring him or having a beef with him.
Yeah, and I didn't learn that on my own. It was basically because of COVID. So when you're forced to try and find parts more creatively, at that point, I know who else buys the same type of parts as me.
You're calling your competitor.
So I would call them and say, hey, listen, I need this part. I'll buy it, or when a mine comes in, I'll send you a replacement. And we started doing that in all three of the areas. And I actually get along so well with one of the competitors in Buffalo that I text him when I'm coming up and we meet for dinner, and he'll tell me what he's seeing in there because he knows I don't live there. He knows I'm not there every day.
Right.
And because he knows I'll tell any of them when they say, are you going to see my customers? I'm going to see every customer that I could possibly service in this area. If it is your customer, I'm not there to steal your customer, but I am there to see everybody that would buy my product. That's my job. I don't want to see your customer list. If I see somebody in your parking lot, I might try not to go see them knowing they're your customer, but they might also not be happy with you and be ready to go to one of my other competitors. So
Sure.
my job is constant relationships. It's biz dev. That's, same as your job. That's what we're supposed to do every day. We're supposed to constantly be trying to develop our businesses, whether it's through relationships, whether it's just through awareness, and whether it's through sharing, common knowledge. And I feel that same way. I feel that COVID put me in a position where I had to lean on these other guys, and, they had to lean back on me. So there's no point in us fighting over, he has his 100 customers, I have my 100 customers. If I get one of his and he gets one of mine, it's okay. It's just how the balance is fine. I'm not going to be able to go and steal customers that he's had for 30 years. He's not going to steal my customers that I've had for 20 years. So why not work together? Like you said, it makes more sense. Share some of the load. Everybody has struggles and everybody has problems. And people that have friendly competition, it feels nicer at the end of the day. I like when I see Serge from A1 coming up to my shop. Be like, oh, here comes Serge. Let's see what he's got today. He's a great personality. And I'll be like, what do you need? Oh, I hope you got it. And, he's a lot of fun. And I would never have met these people if it wasn't for that situation of saying, how am I going to figure this out? And they were doing the same thing.
Sure.
I'm so glad you stopped because I need this. And then it became a bartering thing where when they couldn't get a certain part that I'd already had on the shelf, we'd work together. And at the end of the day, the customers got back out on the road. Might that same customer have called me and bought that one tie rod end? Yeah. And then I would have ruined my relationship with that shop who helped me with 3 springs I couldn't find for my best customer that needed them badly.
Right.
It's all a balance, but I don't like to compete with anybody. I send them Christmas cards around Christmas time. I bring them bottles of booze. Like we're all here to work and do the same thing. No reason to be cutthroat about it.
Sure.
Competition is good.
The competition is good. It keeps you on your toes.
Right.
If you didn't have
Absolutely.
competition, you get lackadaisical. I've found myself doing that many times over my career. When we kind of got good at something and we kind of had our place, you're not working as hard for it. You're just not on top of your game. So I enjoy competition. I'm in the app world now, and I'm a little fish in a big technology world. And I think we're gonna impress a lot of people over the next couple of years, and we're gonna disrupt a lot of people. But I thrive on the competition. We look around and say, oh, this guy might be getting our space, or they might be doing something better, and it gets like, oh man, another one. But all right, good. I like it because they make me a better business person. They
Right.
make me better at what I do.
Absolutely.
And I like your attitude. Not everybody has your attitude though.
No.
A lot of guys are sitting there going, damn it, I know that guy has that effing spring down there. I'm not going to call him, though, because his dad pissed me off 20 years ago, and I'm just not going to do it.
And you know what? I think that's also a dynamic of working with the blue-collar crowd. We're kind of grudge holders. In general,
I know
if somebody
I am.
burns us once, we don't ever go back. And I could have 18 friends be like, no, it's a new owner. It's a new cook at that restaurant. No, I threw up. I'm done. Like, I'm never going there.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
But yeah, so surprisingly, I was able to get over that for this and found that most of these guys were in the same position. They had the same kinds of mindsets. Now, again, that wasn't true for everybody I reached out to during COVID.
Sure.
There was some people that I said, hey, I'm looking for this part. Yep, I got it. I'll ship it to you. Okay, it's LongLife. Oh, I don't sell to other spring shops. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to buy it personally, no. If that's your mentality, if you'd rather lose this sale than have the sale, it's not a good fit for us because I'll sell anything to anybody.
Sure.
If I bought a motorcycle, stopped at a yard sale. Somebody thought I was at the yard sale selling the bike. Do you want to sell that bike? I added $500 to what I just paid. Yeah, do you want to buy it? And my wife's looking at me. She's like, are you nuts? I was like, I'll go buy the same bike
nicer
tomorrow
one.
with $500 more. She's
Yeah.
like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
She's like, but you just got, there's no emotional attachment.
It's business, man.
Yeah,
It's
that's
business.
it. It's always about the money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How can you get more of it, without ripping anybody off? That's my thing.
Relationship.
Yeah, and I like to have, one thing we do pride ourselves on at LongLife is integrity. I mean, if you drop your truck off, I don't want my guys to fix anything that shouldn't be fixed. This is not an upsell business. We're here to keep these trucks running effectively and performing well, not to try and get all your money in one shot. I'll repair this year. I'll repair that next year. I will get the money over 5 years. It's a truck. These things break in time frames that I'm aware of because we warranty them. I know if I put kingpins in, I know you're going to be back in about a year because that's all aftermarket kingpins last. It's just what it is. So yeah, we don't have to. That's a nice thing about us that I don't see at a lot of other garages is I'm not trying to rip anybody off, even if there's something that I could get away with doing. For what? These trucks break. It's never going to stop happening. They're always going to break.
You have job security.
Yeah.
And the new ones don't last nearly as well as the old ones did.
No, and that's the other, that's the one misconception I do get the most is people will say, I had this part in for 4 years. You put in a new part and they're only lasting a year. Well, the rest of the truck is 4 years old. There's play in everything else. Nothing is ever, the OE parts are not bad parts. They're great parts. They wouldn't put them in the vehicle that they're going to warranty if they were bad parts. Right. But they're not good for longevity, and they're not good for doing anything other than what the OE thinks you should do. So that is one thing people say to me all the time, why do your parts not last as long? And that's why, because the truck's now 4 years older that you're changing this part. Everything else is wrong. This is actually a better part than what you had originally. But unless you want to replace the whole truck, you're going to consistently, and that's what a truck is. It's a 7 to 8 year cycle. 7 to 8 years. If you're super efficient, if your guys like up here, like Baranich, like they can run older stuff. They're very tight, well-ran organization. I think they're third generation of family members that have been running the same types of. They know what they're doing. Their number of their trucks, their type of trucks is exactly what they're familiar with. Not everybody is in that same situation. A lot of people buy what's available as they need it, and you're switching manufacturers. It's hard to learn all that stuff.
Yep.
Like it's very few groups left like that know their business, they know their customers, and they know their needs. If you're in a growth mode, you're buying whatever you need to fill the needs so that you can continue to grow.
That's how I did it.
Yeah, it's so hard to structure it up. And I watch Alec the same way. Like watching him grow down there is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, they're doing a good job down there.
Yeah,
they really are.
Great people.
Yep,
great people. I love working with everybody there.
Good dudes.
Yeah, they really are.
So, Jonathan, I mean, you guys have an awesome business, awesome story. I give you a lot of credit for, thinking outside of the box and kind of taking some of the approaches that you guys do. I think you guys have a really great story. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how they can get in touch with LongLife, maybe some of your high-level services?
Yeah, alignments, inspections, those are the biggest needs that we can get those in every day, all day. We'll do tow sets while you wait. We'll get your inspection done while you wait. Those aren't things you have to drop off. We understand those are stickers you need to be DOT compliant and get back on the road. Primarily suspension, steering, but we do sell parts. All of our vendors, all of our parts, we do sell wholesale and retail. Just like, the dealership in Fleet Pride, we have a very large selection, and most of it's in the Northeast. So it's all very close by. Our website, longlifefleet.com, it has every location's phone, fax, email, manager, and customer service person's name, and some of our products on there.
Okay. And again, it's Scranton, Williamsport, and Buffalo.
Buffalo, yes, sir.
Right? Awesome. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Love the story, and I wish you and Greg much success, and look forward to seeing you out and about around town here.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. This was my first podcast and one of the most fun things I've done this year so far.
You did awesome. Hope to have you on again someday. Maybe we'll bring the podcast trailer down to the spring shop for an event someday, and we'll get Greg in and he can tell his side of the story.
I would love that, and so would he. He's a little shyer than me, but he loves to tell his story. He does.
Awesome. All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.